Today we're probably going to go through some Reddit things. We're going to go through some Reddit questions. Do not forget to like / subscribe to the channel, to the podcast, to the stream. And I'm just really going to quickly check whether everything is working fine. Which is the only problem that I'm having with streaming in general. I do like the concept. I actually do love the concept because I think it is just amazing. But everything needs to work, and everything needs to work in such a way that is consumable and good and great and whatnot. A few days ago, I've actually decided to transform the podcast a little tiny bit. And this is partly the reason why, or part of the reason why I have decided to restructure my flat a little tiny bit. So in the background you don't see that much anymore because I wanted it to be that way, and also because there is a light up there and it is shining directly into my face, which makes it a bit easy for me to record when it is later because you can still see me. And I do want to create something that is presentable and worthwhile going through, while talking about those things that that give me something and I know is gonna get somebody something, or is something for someone else, so that somebody else can learn something from whatever I'm trying to learn as well. But until then, I've actually decided that we are gonna go through a new book summary. Or are we? No, we're not. Because I would really be quick to find something worthwhile going through. So there we go. Is this big enough? Let me see. Yes. This is exactly as big as it should be. I'm doing it like this and like that and like this. And there we go. Might actually be the first one, the one that I've accidentally clicked on. Seneca, a man is as unhappy as he has convinced himself he is. Personal opinions. Well, I think that the headline itself says it all, and I would definitely also agree with that. If you really, quite decide that you are really happy and that you're doing well, then this is also going to be the case. You are also going to be happy. On the other hand, there is many, many ways in which we can make ourselves unhappy and we can make ourselves feel pretty miserable, even if we quite have everything that we need, everything that we would like to have actually. This is probably partly one of the reasons why, even if people are really, really wealthy and basically have everything one could want to have or would like to have, they're still unhappy and still want to do something else, want to have more, want to do more, whatever it may be about. It is pretty difficult, though. It is very easy for me to say, and actually for everybody to say, well, it is all a mind game. It is something that we do to ourselves basically in the end, but it is not easy. It is for sure not easy to deal with, and for sure not easy to control as well, because we are very emotional. We are not rational. One of the reasons why trying to combat oneself or somebody else with logic often really doesn't work. Of course, we all know that, for example, smoking is a bad idea or something else. There's many examples that I could get up with, or that I could bring up here, point out. But we know that it is bad. We know so many things, but the problem is we are emotional, and emotionally driven in the end, Of course, I guess a pretty good example is everything that has something to do with addiction. Addiction is a feeling, it is not necessarily something logical. Unless you kind of boil it down to a biological level, because, then it might be logical. But in the end, it is something that's, pretty much based on emotions and feelings and so on and so forth, which just makes it also very complicated and very difficult for us to solve and, for us to deal with. But in the end, if we figure out how to deal with it, if we figure out, know what to do about it and how to combat that, how to basically convince ourselves in some sort of manner, then we are able to kind of solve that problem relatively quickly. Though, I do also want to point out that from time to time, it is important to go ahead with logic and combat your emotional side with logic, because this might lead you to, realize something and change your emotional balance, let's call it like that. Anyway, recently I've been struggling with demons of my own making, which have caused me to fall back into depression, back on bad habits, becoming lethargic and lost the spark in a way that made me a bright person. This has affected my ability to concentrate and taken the easy way out of my challenges the past few years. I noticed one thing, that when I tried convincing myself I was sad and feeling pity of myself, that it was a self-fulfilling prophecy, nor trying to force myself into a false sense of happiness, a real fix for the issue either. What I've noticed really works is a blank open mindset, not really being fixated on one thing, but open to new ideas/experiences, and accepting that things are beyond my control, but I can accept to control how I react to them instead of them controlling me. So in the end, I find that actually really interesting. Not really trying to convince yourself that you are happy and whatnot, and kind of play that card to some degree, but in the end, more or less, realizing that basically this is something that you're doing to yourself, that it is something that you get yourself into, when you're saying, okay, I'm so bad and whatnot, well, this is probably going to be the case. But being open for things makes you move from the space of, okay, this is who I am, quote unquote, even though it is basically not you, and this is how my life is and this is how I feel, into, okay, let me see what happens. Let me see what happens in my life. Let me see how I'm going to feel tomorrow. Let me see how I'm going to feel in a few seconds. Not being always that fixated on a particular feeling, and maybe even on a particular story that you might be telling yourself about your life, about what you want to have, about whatever, Sometimes being a bit more open than you usually are to basically get what you want to get. A dependence on the future and an absence of lux only seems to put you on the loop of, I feel unhappy, therefore I must be unhappy. I have realized in my studies that overwhelming ourselves with either hopes or fears only leads to anxiety, but rather to rest satisfied with what we have, which is sufficient, as we may not have that forever. The greatest blessings of mankind are within us and within our reach, and we no sooner forget the miracle of life to concern of the future. Seneca, a man is unhappy as he has convinced himself he is. And it is very interesting. Seneca living, I don't know the exact dates, but probably 2,000 years ago or something, a really long time, it must be. And him talking about something that is still relevant is, up to this point, something that fascinates me quite. That Stoics and other philosophies are, really back in the days, even if it is 100 years ago, even if it is 200 years ago, but of course, it is definitely more staggering to consider that this is a few thousand years ago, and they're still talking about the same thing, or just, reversing that we are still talking about the same thing, and we are still trying to figure that out. But actually, be pretty interesting why Stoicism as a philosophy kind of, moved away from the public quite. I do know some Stoics, not personally, but online, people that are spreading the messages, people that are trying to share these techniques, these ideas, these things that might or might not help people, as I'm also kind of trying to do. I think that it may not be Stoicism alone, but Stoicism as part of life, and Stoicism as part as or combined with other philosophies that may actually get you into a space where you really feel good about your life and about yourself, and that makes life better to some degree, and or probably not only to some degree, but really, really, really better by many folds, for some people that are really struggling with things, with their life, with who they are, whatever it may be. I'm 2 days away from completing Sober October, but I'm calling it I crushed it. Long post, and this is a story. Well, I do like certain challenges like, Sober October, and there's actually also, I think, Ink October, as far as I know, and there's other things. I, in general, find that pretty good and amazing because this is some sort of a motivation for people to actually do something about that, and they could use this motivation to, go ahead with it, just using this momentum of, okay, I'm already in 1 month of being sober, of just doing this, that, or the other thing, doesn't matter. And from this point on, it is probably going to be easier to go ahead with this habit that you have built, this habit that you have created in the month than before, Just is sensible, just is logical. And, knowing humans and knowing oneself, one just has to agree to that. But I kind of do have a feeling that most often this is not going to be the case. Most often people then stop doing it because, they have, called it this month and they have called it a day, basically, and stop doing whatever it is all about. To some degree, I do understand it, and I still think that it is a good idea. For example, being sober, drinking being I assume that it is about drinking. Quite, Drinking being basically a common issue, an issue that is very prominent and also dominant in nowadays society, especially I would say in Western areas. And it is amazing that people do not drink for a month, even if it is just not that long of a time or whatnot. But still, it is some time. It is an accomplishment for people that maybe normally drink every single day or every single week. Quite a bunch, maybe just a few beers, not that much. But still, it is great for your health to, from time to time, give your body time to recover, time to just not have toxical things inside of it. So in this sense, I really do appreciate it and like it, but I would really like to see as well more people to use this momentum and kind of transform it into an everyday habit and all-time habit, basically all life habit. But in the end, I'm not controlling that. In the end, this is something that, is not my beer. No, it's not something that I should be concerned about unless it is about very close people. Trends books for a transphobe. Okay. Wish more businesses had these views. Take care of your employees and they will take care of your business. It is as simple as that. Richard Branson. Richard Branson, the founder of, I guess, Virgin is the company called, with an airline even, Virgin Airlines. I guess it is the case. I'm actually not quite sure. Loyal employees are assets, not liabilities. Well, it is very easy to understand because it just makes sense, If you have customers, if you have happy customers, recurring customers, customers that have a long, is it called lifetime value? There's something similar like that, just knowing that this one customer is going to come back again and buy something from you again. And this is not going to be a one-time thing. This is kind of this value that I'm talking about. I might also look it up later, but I guess I'm not going to do so. But the thing is, of course, it just really makes sense that if you have a customer that indeed comes back quite often and is happy and really likes your business, well, it is good for your business. Therefore, this might also be, or definitely is one of the reasons why Amazon is so heavily and crazily, if this is even a word, I don't know, successful, because they really care about their customers and they really also give their customers what they want to have. Of course, you need a lot of data and you need also, probably also a good team and intelligence to understand what your customer needs and wants. But if you give it to them, of course they're going to be happy. If you give it to them, of course they're going to come back later. Of course they're going to stay with your business because you have done good and you're giving them what they need. Obviously, you have to understand that other businesses might be doing the exact same thing as you're doing, and if they're doing it better or maybe cheaper than you are, well, then they have outworked you. Period. Then you once again have to do it better than they are doing it, / maybe cheaper. It doesn't necessarily always have to be about cheaper. Really depends on the person, really depends on the customer, really depends on the target group that you're having, because money is also a story, a story that we are telling ourselves, a story that we actually really like to tell other people. I've spent X amount of money on this and that or the other thing, which kind of, sometimes even, there's actually a word for it, but really often, if you are able to tell somebody, okay, I've spent, and most often it is a huge amount of money on this or that or whatever it might be, then all of a sudden it feels more right for you to have spent that money on it, even if it might have been just way too obnoxiously much, But just by talking about it, by being able to talk about it, by saying, okay, I've spent the money on that, feels great. On the other hand, it's also a great feeling if you can say, okay, I've got this very, very, very cheaply, way cheaper than anyone else. This is also a great story that, we tell other people, but also, of course, ourselves. And in the end, I do also quickly want to talk about employees. If you have happy employees, if you know that they like the job that they're doing, at least, as likable as you can make it, basically. Of course, some people just really dislike a certain category of jobs, and then you can't do much about it because this is their personality. But of course, the work environment, you yourself as a boss, the other supervisors and whatnot, this is a really big part of it, and if they like their work, they're probably going to work better, and they're probably going to work more, and they're probably going to work more efficient, and the overall thing is just going to run more smoothly. The overall, company is going to do better, because people are essential at this point of time. Maybe in the future it's going to change, maybe in the future we're going to use AI for a lot of things. But I would argue that for an extended period of time, there's still going to be quite a lot of people in companies, and they should be treated in an appropriate way. I do understand, though, that certain jobs, they do not mean that much, or those people do not mean that much, because these jobs can be done by everyone. And this is just something, I guess, that everyone basically has to understand. I don't basically want to understand it, or some sort of don't want to understand, because I don't want this to be the case. I don't want it to be the case that somebody's just, worth less just because their job can be done by quite everyone. On the other hand, by reversing that, reverse engineering that, you could also make sure that whatever job you're doing can maybe only be done by you. And if this is really the case, also company-wise, then people need you, and other companies need you, B2B, B2C, whatever it may be. This is fucking great, This is kind of the best thing you can have. You being the only person, the only company, the only institute, the only whatever it might be, that can do this certain thing. Of course, if this certain thing is just, not used anymore, or nobody cares about it, then it is quite worthless. But, if everyone uses it, if a lot of people need it, then it is worth really a lot. And so it makes sense to maybe focus on that as a person, starting to get into something, maybe also thinking about those skills that you maybe should be acquiring to actually achieve this quote-unquote status in general. And of course, there's 8 billion people on this planet. The chance of you being completely unique in what you're capable of doing, might not actually be that high on some sort of a micro level. Macro level, just completely the case, because of course nobody did the things that I did, period. Only I did the things that I did. Also meaning nobody did the exact same projects that I did. Period. This is just not something that is the case. If this is good or bad, well, something that I cannot decide, basically, or say. I think sometimes you forget how much you have been through. Today I learned that Martha Stewart dated Anthony Hopkins, but ended their relationship after she saw The Silence of the Lambs because she was unable to avoid associating Hopkins with the character of Hannibal Lecter. Anthony Hopkins. Isn't there a Hopkins Institute or something? And I also know Martha Stewart, but I don't know where I know this name from. Anyway, I am 36 male, decided to make a difficult decision, so my partner, 26 female, didn't have to. Last week in couples therapy, my partner, 26, shared that she wanted to move out. We've been dating for 3.5 years and first moved in together in January 2020. COVID was tough on the relationship. She had just quit her job and I was laid off due to COVID reductions. The life we'd imagined we would have with our own respective lives, traveling and all of our plans evaporated and we became very codependent. It was over a year before I accepted a new offer for a full-time job. I needed a break from work after a year and a half of working full-time while pursuing a part-time MBA. Financially, I was okay with that time off, but a short break turned into a few months, which turned into a full year. My social anxiety exploded and my self-worth plummeted. I became really dependent on her. Let me see, because this might, even if I may not actually have a good answer to, and I really do not have a good answer to many questions, but reading about things and sharing a few stories often is really enough to make one feel heard, make one feel like, okay, I'm not the only one, and also, well, maybe give somebody advice for whatever he or she might be going through at the time. She shared that she felt like living apart would be the best thing for our relationship. She said at 26 that she didn't know who she was or what she wanted, or she also shared that she had been feeling this way for over a year. While I was saddened by the fact that she thought she couldn't share this with me, I felt an even deeper sadness for the experience she must have been going through. Yes, some sort of an existential crisis, definitely not something anyone wants to go through. She was 22 when we started dating. I've always been very mindful about our age difference, avoiding offering unsolicited advice when she encountered challenges I'd already experienced, so she could learn her own lessons in that process. At the same time, I always knew that she would eventually need some period of independence in this relationship before we progressed into a more committed state like engagement. In my mind, I always imagined this would come to pass in the form of some extended solo travel, pursuing some experience overseas, or considering a graduate degree. In spite of this, when she shared her feelings, it still took me by surprise, and as supportive as I wanted to be, I was plagued by a lot of uncertainty that triggered some fears of abandonment and fear of being unworthy of love. Is this actually... this is so long. Anyway, maybe I'm actually able to go through it. Let me see. She spends the weekend visiting her family, working an event for her mom that she had planned prior to sharing this news. This time, a part offered me the spare for some valuable reflection. I recently attended an ayahuasca ceremony at the recommendation of my therapist, where I unblocked and processed a lot of trauma relating to a period of loss marked by the death of my father, the mental decline of my mother, and the death of my college ex-girlfriend from a drug overdose. That particular experience had been clouding me to a lot of pre-existing trauma that shaped my relationship with some of the fears. Over the weekend, I read about limbic resonance, regulation, and revision in a book about ayahuasca that my therapist had shared. I also was introduced to attachment theory, and a short quiz suggested my attachment style was anxious/preoccupied. In the very recent past, I went through this book and also went through a quiz regarding those attachment styles. Actually pretty interesting. You're probably able to find it by just Googling for it. All of this helped me understand that the fearful reaction I had to what she shared was rooted in some pre-existing trauma and not related to what she was asking for. Which I would argue is actually very often the case. That the way in which we react to certain things is pretty much rooted in who we are. I was feeling a lot of uncertainty around what would happen after she moved out. She had shared things in the past that made me feel like what she really needed was to be single. My intuition was telling me that she was waiting until after she moved out to soften the blow and not have to be around to face the consequences of that hard decision. In spite of what I had told her throughout our relationship about knowing she would need some independence, I understand that my actions over the last year made her think I was emotionally fragile and would act in some volatile way to her need to end our relationship. I know this is not true. I am sensitive but not fragile, but I understand that actions speak louder than words. In therapy this week, I had shared that impulse that part of me wanted to know what would happen after she moved out, but that it was also unfair to ask her to know or share that with me. She told me she doesn't know herself or what she wants, and she's been through so much bottling up these needs for the last year. We spent some time apart after therapy, and I realized that even though I wanted to work through things together, I will be okay even if this time apart becomes permanent. I believe you can work on yourself in a relationship, but there are definitely some things I can't work on alone, and having the time to yourself is always a positive. I wanted us to be together, but I also know that I deserve to have a partner who doesn't have these huge unanswered questions. I also know that she needed to see that I know I am okay and will be okay regardless of what happens with our relationship. I decided to free her of the burden of having me to tell me if she needed a break and say that we should take one if we meant to be together. I know it will improve the chances of that happening in the future to end things on a high note. Well, I'm actually not quite sure. Difficult to say, very, very difficult to say. Let me quickly check the stream, because I never ever know if somebody writes something in the chat, because I am not there, basically. That night when she came home, I sat her down and shared all of this and more. There were tears, but at the end she said thank you, and we hugged, danced for hours and sang and made love. Last night was the same, and this morning I left for a friend's wedding out of state. I know there will be hard days ahead, as there will be a huge void in my life left by her presence as my cohabitating partner, but I know I can handle that by filling it with friends, family, self-care and patience. I felt like the uncertainty we felt put us at risk of acting out of fear in these final days living together, and I didn't want our memories of the end of this phase of our relationship to be of us acting out of fear. Love is always the answer. If I had waited for her to make the decision, it would have put more emotional labor on her, and I probably would have needed space to heal and process from that rejection. By approaching it this way, I feel like we can continue to transition from living together to whatever is next in a loving and supportive, connected way for now. I've often heard in the areas of love and spiritual healing that if you are facing demons, you should give them a name to take away their power. In our case, the demon was uncertainty, and giving it a name of a break really did help to reframe the whole experience. I didn't want a break, but I will make the most of it, and as corny and emotionally tone deaf as this saying can sometimes sound, I do believe if you love someone, you should let it go, and it's meant to be. And if it is meant to be, they will come back to you. TLDR, my partner asked to live apart. My intuition told me that she needed a break, so I offered that to her, and she thanked me. Isn't it long story short, but this doesn't really fit the initials or whatever it may be. I don't know. A very quick thought, how should I say? Well, let's just stick with thought of mine about the whole situations. Very difficult story. Also knowing things that I know and having experienced what I've experienced, it's difficult to understand that, well, whether this is actually the end of a relationship or just indeed a break, quite, somehow, because you're living apart, you're probably not going to see each other for an extended period of time, whatnot. It really depends on what it is all about. It really depends on how things are, and it really depends on how you're dealing with it, and how the other person is also dealing with it. Because of course, in this period of time, you are not in control of this person. This person can do whatever this person wants to do, and there might be some actions being done that you really dislike, and I don't know, like, if you think about the fact that this person might be living a very certain life while you are kind of thinking about the fact that, well, eventually she's gonna come back, eventually it is gonna be good, eventually we're gonna live together once again, and basically, quote unquote, waste a lot of time waiting for this person that is, maybe never ever gonna come back. And I do now know what he meant by uncertainty, and this is huge uncertainty. Also huge uncertainty regarding what should I do. But of course, communication here is very important. Being like, okay, does this mean for me that I'm, for example, and I guess this is actually a pretty huge deal, that I'm gonna be having sex with other people? Is this okay then? Or should there be even rules in this break? Or is this just a break up? Because essentially it kind of is them breaking up. Very difficult, really incredibly difficult, because it was never worthwhile to kind of wait for somebody to come back, wait for somebody to be there again, while kind of reserving yourself, okay, I'm not going to talk to anybody because I know this person is going to eventually come back. But guess what the other person is doing? This person is talking to many people. This person is having sex with many people. This person is doing just many things that you would have never thought this person is going to do. So should you do those things? Shouldn't you do those things? Should you, I don't know, try to do those things? Should you just live your life as you normally do and just let things happen as they do happen? Are you eventually going to find another person that you actually like to be with way more than with this other person? But after a few years, this person comes back and then sees you with the new person. This, I don't know, like, unless it is a very concrete and distinct and for sure breakup, I'm not that fond of this idea. Or it is just a break, Either one of those things, but I do not see both in it, or neither of these things in it. I see somewhat of an, okay, we don't know thing. But I don't know, I would really like to have it clear. Is this a breakup, or is this just a break without the up? Very crucial statement, very crucial discussion, very crucial, word in the end. It's just about the up. Is it a break or a breakup? Because if it is a breakup, then I do whatever I want to do. If it is a break, then there probably are going to be certain rules, certain things. It would also, for example, make sense after a month of break seeing each other again. But on the other hand, is a break even worthwhile if you're not able to do whatever you want to do and still have those rules and still are somehow connected to this person? Isn't it all about not being connected with this person and just doing whatever the fuck you want to do? Difficult, but yeah. I'm gonna end the stream here. Actually, kind of the longest recording that I've had probably in a year or something. Back in the days I've recorded for an hour or something. But anyway, I'm gonna end the stream here and hopefully you're gonna see you the next time. Don't forget to like the episode, the podcast, this video, whatever it might be. Subscribe to the channel. or the podcast or whatever it might